Hello, hello. Good day sa inyong lahat. Welcome here to my channel, Chester Howard Lee. Today we're going to talk about biblical psychology of anxiety. By the way, I'm Sir Howard. Welcome to this video na sana makatulong sa'yo. This is a very long topic, so hinati ko yung ating discussion on this topic into two parts. Part 1 will be today, and part 2 will be the next time that I upload a video. Now, for part 1, the goal for today, napakasimple lang. I'm going to present to you the basic truths about anxiety. This is important kasi kapag naintindihan natin how anxiety works in the basic level, we are going to use these truths later on para mapag-aralan natin how do we handle anxiety better. So, part 1 is all about the foundations of human anxiety. Ano ba tong mga dapat nating malaman when we talk about anxiety? There are 6 psychological basic truths that I want you to know about anxiety, and in addition to this, i-relate din natin ito sa mga key biblical principles that talk about anxiety. Number 1, anxiety, you have to understand, is an emotion. Isa itong nararamdaman. Anong ibig sabihin ng anxiety in dictionary? A feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. Nag-aalala ka, ninenervyos ka, nababalisa ka, yan yung ibig sabihin ng anxiety in the dictionary. So I want you to take time, i-pause mo muna tong video na ito, and then think of the last time na sa tingin mo you were anxious. When was that last episode in your life where you can say sobrang taas ng anxiety mo? And then as you remember this episode in your life, habang nagpapatuloy ako, I want you to match whether that episode is in line with the things that I am saying here. Mas maganda para maintindihan natin yung anxiety other than the dictionary meaning, hanapin natin yung origin ng salitang anxiety. Did you know that the word anxiety came from the Latin word anxietatem, which means in English uneasy or troubled mind? Those words very important. When you feel anxious, ibig sabihin yan uneasy at yung mind mo troubled. Kaya ang pinakamalapit na Tagalog word for this is balisa. Kapag sinasabi mong balisa ka o balisa yung katabi mo o balisa yung mami mo, then it's the same as saying as they are feeling very anxious. And we have an idea anong itsura ng tao na balisa, 'di ba? Definitely it's not good. Ganyan yung mga mukha nila. You know that they are not in their normal state. You know there is something wrong. You know meron silang matinding pinagdaraanan psychologically. Because again, anxiety generally hindi talaga magandang emotion yan. Hindi siya pleasant emotion. Now, in the Bible, there are many passages and narratives na makikita natin anxiety at work. Pero syempre, because of our time, I'm going to present to you only some. Exodus chapter 16 verse 6 to 8, kitang-kita natin yung anxiety ng mga tao dito. So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, "In the evening, you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, and in the morning, you will see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we that you should grumble against us?" Moses also said, "You will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening, and all the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? You are not grumbling against us, but against the Lord." In this short passage, ang anxious dito, si Moses, pati yung mga Israelites. Number 1, the Israelites were grumbling kasi nahihirapan sila sa desert. Remember, they came from Egypt where generally, compared to the desert, mas komportable yung buhay nila doon. But since they are now in the desert, ang dami nilang mga comforts na hindi nararanasan, that made them anxious, and that was translated to their complaining to Moses. Dito naman sa passage na ito, si Moses is also anxious, we can say, kasi parang yung pagrereklamo ng Israelites, siya yung nag-absorb. Eh, di ba, totoo naman nakaka-anxious yan kapag ikaw yung bagsakan ng mga complaints, kapag ikaw yung bagsakan ng sumbungan, kapag ikaw yung nagiging shock absorber ng mga tao na anxious, na-anxious ka rin. Diba? So, this is a very clear passage that talks about anxiety. In the New Testament, si Jesus himself underwent the emotion of anxiety. Matthew 26 verses 36 to 39. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And taking with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Ayan na. Yung two words na yon, sorrowful and troubled, refers to anxiety. Then he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." In this passage, merong dalawang points dito where we can feel Jesus' anxiety. Una doon sa verse 38. Then he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death." That is an expression of anxiety. In the second point naman, sa verse 39, makikita mo yung anxiety ni Jesus through his prayer. Sabi niya, di ba, going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me." Yung cup na sinasabi niya dito is the impending impending crucifixion na pagdaraanan niya. Kasi nakita na niya, Jesus can see the future kung ano yung pagdaraanan niya sa crucifixion. And it was not good, di ba? Talagang papaluin siya ng maraming beses, papahirapan siya, iinsultuhin siya, ipapako siya sa krus. So, seeing these things inside his head made him really anxious. So again, this passage, Matthew 26, 36 to 39, napakaklarong passage na ito na nagpapakita ng anxiety. Okay? So, going back to point number 1, definitely anxiety is an emotion. But there is one more thing that you have to understand about anxiety. Marami pala itong expression. Hindi lang iisang paraan o iisang klase ang expression ng anxiety. You can express this in different forms. For example, kapag makikinig ka ng mga pop songs natin ngayon, lalo na yung mga tungkol sa sawi, 'di ba? Nasawi, nag-break. Maraming mga pop songs ngayon are showing to us that anxieties can have many forms. Take for instance this song coming from NSYNC. Gumawa sila ng kanta, "Drive Myself Crazy." Sabi nung kanta, "Lying in your arms, so close together, didn't know just what I had. Now I toss and turn, 'cause I'm without you, how I'm missing you so bad. Where was my head, where was my heart, now I cry, alone in the dark." Definitely, kapag kinakanta mo yan with all sincerity, we can say na nakaka-feel ka ng anxiety. Wrong spelling pala yung cause ko dito, no? Ipalitan na natin ngayon. "'Cause I'm without you." So, mababasa mo dito sa kanta ng NSYNC, anxious siya. Parang meron kasi siyang matinding pagsisisi. 'Di ba? Nung kasama pa niya yung girl dito, he's taking it for granted. Nung iniwan na siya, namimiss naman niya. So, he is feeling anxious in this song. Another song, ito naman, OPM. Sabi ni Maring Rosel, "Bakit nga ba mahal kita kahit na di pinapansin ang damdamin ko?" Naku, baka marami makarelate dyan. Yung mga nakaka-relate, mag-comment sa baba. "Hindi mo man ako mahal, heto pa rin akong nagmamahal ng tapat sa'yo. Bakit nga ba mahal kita kahit na may mahal ka pang iba? Bakit baliw na baliw ako sa'yo? Hanggang kailan ako magtitiis? O bakit nga ba mahal kita?" Actually, dito, magkasama pa sila Dito kasi sa NSYNC iniwan na siya, no? Dito, magkasama pa rin sila pero anxious siya sa relationship. This is a cry of desperation. Parang natotorn siya no? Between staying in the relationship kasi mahal nga niya yung guy, pero yung guy hindi na siya mahal. 'Di ba sinabi niya sa kanta, may mahal ng iba. Alam niyang hindi na siya mahal, pero mahal pa rin niya yung guy, so nakaka-anxious talaga yon. It is a cry of desperation. She doesn't know what to do anymore. So in those two songs, di ba, pareho namang anxiety yan, papasok naman dun sa definition ng anxiety, but the expressions are different. And again, dalawang examples pa lang yun, no? But if you read the literature on anxiety, ang dami pang mga ibang ways how anxieties can be expressed. For example, in a form of fear, confusion, anger, guilt, worry, sadness, lahat yan are specific expressions of anxiety. Kaya naman, isa pang implication na pwede nating matutunan so far is anxiety is a negative state of mind. Kahit saan ka pumunta sa mga emotions na yan, ayaw mo yan di ba? I mean, hindi mo pagpe-pray kay God yan na, Lord, make me confused every day. Diba? Lord, sana po lagi niyo pong gawing sad. Of course not. Diba? So, it is a very negative state of mind. Therefore, we want to get rid of this. Kaya nga natin gagawin yung part 2 after this lecture. Pag-uusapan natin, so, if we don't want to be anxious, how do we deal with it? Yun yung pag-uusapan natin sa second part of the video. But so far, what you have to understand is anxiety, generally, it is a negative state of mind. Number 2, the tendency to be anxious has genetic basis. Merong mga tao mabilis ma-anxious, merong mga tao matagal ma-anxious. Ang dahilan dyan, kasi may kinalaman dyan yung nervous system mo. Totoo na namamana yan Pwedeng namana mo from your parents na mabilis kang ma-anxious or namana mo from your parents na matagal kang ma-anxious. In psychological terms, ang tawag natin dito, 'di ba, yung mga highly reactive versus the lowly reactive. Highly reactive people, lagi silang hot, lagi silang anxious. Konting bagay lang na anxious sila. Nag-hyper react sila. People naman na low reactive level, chill lang sila. Ang dami-dami ng mga masasamang nangyayari sa paligid nila, pero it takes a lot before they feel anxiety. May mga ganyang tao What explains that? Well, namamana nga kasi yan. Nasa genetic programming mo yan kung bakit mabilis kang ma-anxious versus matagal kang ma-anxious. You study developmental psychology. Nagsisimula raw natin ma-observe ito, infancy pa lang makikita mo na yung anxiety pattern ng mga babies that they inherited from their parents. Specifically, I'm talking about the research by Thomas and Chess. I-google nyo na lang ito, But very popular research in the field of DevPsych, specifically infant development, these researchers discovered na ang mga babies ay mahahati natin into the following groups. Merong difficult babies, and the slow to warm up babies, at meron din tayong easy babies. Yung difficult and slow to warm up babies, these are babies na mabilis ma-anxious. Napakadalang lang that they are feeling great about themselves, while the easy babies, ito naman yung mga bata na matagal ma-anxious. Infancy pa lang, you can already see these patterns. And according to DevPsych research, this pattern of how you express anxiety, nadadala natin yan as we grow older. So yung mga difficult to slow to warm up babies, madalas ang anxiety niyan madalas o very frequent habang sila ay lumalaki compared to the easy babies. Yung mga easy babies, most likely sila yung mga laging chill lang. It takes a lot before they become anxious. In the language of the Big 5 model, yung mga psych majors alam na alam nito, yung level of anxiety mo ay may kinalaman yan sa iyong neuroticism. That is one of the Big 5. Ocean, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Di ba nga sa Big 5 personality test, merong kang separate scores for each 5 So merong mga tao talaga sadyang mataas ang level of N nila, high anxiety, may mga tao mababa ang letter N, that's low anxiety. Number 3, moderate anxiety is good. Sabi natin kanina, in general, anxiety is not a negative state of mind, pero merong exception yan. Kapag yung level of anxiety mo tama lang, average lang, nasa gitna lang, hindi masyadong matindi, then it is good for our psychological functioning. Ang tanong, bakit? Ano ba ang mabuting na idudulot sa atin kapag yung anxiety natin moderate level? Well, do you know that moderate level of anxiety is related to motivation? Gumagalaw tayo. Dahil meron tayo mga bagay na ayaw nating mangyari, na anxious tayo na ayaw nating mangyari, yung mga bagay na yon, what do? Well, we move. 'Di ba? Para gagawa tayo ng mga paraan para yung mga events that we don't like to happen, events that will make us anxious, we can prevent. Like for example, we work hard para hindi tayo mamatay sa gutom. 'Di ba? We study hard para hindi tayo bumagsak sa mga exams. Or we really do our best to maintain a relationship. Gumagawa tayo ng mga bagay na makakapagpasaya sa partner natin, na makakapagpalakas sa relationship natin because we don't like to be left by our partner. Aray, 'di ba? Ayaw nating naiiwan. Nakakatakot na maiwan, masakit na maiwan. So, ang ginagawa natin para hindi tayo maiwan, gumagawa tayo ng mga paraan. Yung certain level of anxiety na yon is the one pushing us to strengthen the relationship para hindi mangyari yung mga kinatatakutan natin in our relationship. Number 4, excessive anxiety is bad. So again, in number 3, moderate level of anxiety is good. Pero kapag sobra naman yung anxiety, masama naman yan. Kasi kapag ang tao masyadong mataas ang level of anxiety, tumataas din yung ating level of cortisol. It is a kind of hormone in our body na kapag masyadong mataas ay hindi rin maganda. Moderate level of cortisol, because of moderate anxiety, okay lang yon. It makes you motivated. It keeps you moving. Hindi ka nagiging kampante. Pero kapag sobrang taas na ng anxiety mo, sobrang taas na rin ng cortisol mo, hindi na rin maganda yan. Kasi it negatively affects your body. Like what? Ito ang mga nararanasan ng katawan mo pag sobrang taas ng cortisol mo. Sweating, chest pain, heart palpitations, increased muscle tension, nausea or diarrhea, so on and so forth. And meron tayong magandang lesson na pwedeng matutunan dito. Meron tayong mga physical na sakit na ang cause hindi physical. Wala kang virus, wala kang bacteria, walang problema sa katawan mo. But the reason why you are experiencing these physical symptoms has something to do with a psychological anxiety. So wag natin laging pinagbibintangan yung virus o yung bacteria o yung katawan natin why we experience physiological symptoms. Minsan yung mga nararamdaman natin sa katawan natin psychological ang origin. Na-anxious ka. Masyadong mataas yung level of anxiety mo. Idagdag ko lang, other than these physiological effects, ang epekto pa ng anxiety sa atin, humihina ang immune system. Delikado yan, lalong-lalo na ngayon, pandemya. Kaya mas tumataas yung chance mo na magka-COVID kapag anxious ka. Kaya nga marami mga doctors ngayon, isa sa mga sinasabi na tip para hindi tayo magka-COVID, relax lang tayo. Kasi when we become too anxious about the situation, it weakens our immune system, the more nagiging prone ka na magka-COVID. Bumabagsak din ang iyong memory, bumabagsak din yung iyong ability to concentrate. Ganyan kagrabe ang epekto kapag masyadong mataas ang cortisol in our bloodstream. Bakit ba mataas ang level of cortisol? Sobrang taas kasi ng anxiety. In the Bible, alam nyo ba, si Jesus, dumating sa point na sa sobrang anxious niya because he is going to undergo the crucifixion, sobrang taas ang anxiety niya na siya ay nag-sweat ng blood. No, talagang yung mga blood streams niya nagputukan because of his extreme level of anxiety, and that is recorded in Luke 22:44. And being in agony, Jesus prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. Yan na talaga yung sobrang taas ng anxiety. Pwede nyo na lang to i-google. No? Meron itong specific na tawag. But medically speaking, this is possible. Nagpuputukan yung mga blood streams mo sa sobrang taas ng level of anxiety mo. Okay? So, you just Google this, but my point here is, this is medically possible. Okay? So, biblically accurate itong nire-report ng Luke 22:44. It can happen to any human beings. Number 5, excessive anxiety negatively affects performance. So, sabi natin kanina, maraming physiological effects na masama. Yung anxiety, it does not stop in your body. Yung sobrang taas na anxiety mo, it can also be carried over to the way you do things, to your quality of performance. Kaya halimbawa, sa sports psychology, tinuturo ko ito no? Isang reason bakit ng isang athlete, he or she is not performing at the best level during a game, kasi masyadong mataas ang anxiety during the game. Kinabahan. or sa Tagalog, dinaga. In the language of sports psychology, choking. 'Di ba? From the word choke, nagcho-choke ang isang athlete. Maraming ganyan yung magaling sa practice, magaling sa scrimmage, pero hanggang doon lang yung galing. Pagdating sa tunay na laro, hindi niya na ilalabas yung kanyang tunay na performance. The reason, masyadong mataas yung level of anxiety niya during the game. Kaya nga yung mga sports psychologists, one of their jobs is to teach athletes how to manage anxiety while they are playing the actual game. Kaya totoo rin yung kasabihan na ang sports hindi lang yan puro physical, psychological game din yan. One important skill that you need to learn to do as an athlete, paano mo kakalabanin yung iyong anxiety. One good example, si LeBron James when he was still in Miami, kung kailan sila natalo sa championship. Many sports experts are saying kaya raw natalo ang Miami against Dallas Mavericks kasi si LeBron James may ganyang problema during championships, no? Yung madalas siyang kabahan and it affects his performance. Like for example, let me read to you an article that described how LeBron James suffers anxiety during important games. After James began to shed his reputation as a playoff choker. So, reputasyon na pala yan Bakit ba siya naging playoff choker? Kasi tuwing ang mga laro importante, sabi ng mga sports statisticians, yung mga numbers ni LeBron James bumababa. Pero kapag yung laro, wala naman masyadong bearing, hindi pa championship, hindi pa playoff, ang gaganda ng performance niya. So, LeBron James was known to be a playoff choker. So, let's continue. Anong sabi? He has told again in the finals. So, nag-championship siya against Dallas Mavericks, kinabahan na naman. Scoring just 2 points in the fourth quarter of Game 5. At hindi magandang performance yan, especially kung ikaw ang star player ng team. Important game, Game 5, you're the star player, hindi pwedeng i-score ka lang ng 2 points. But that's what LeBron James showed on that game. When Miami needed him most, he failed. Let's continue. With the score tied at 100 and just under 3 minutes left, malapit na matapos yung laro, James shot an 18-foot jumper over Jason Kidd, a defender a dozen years his senior, and not only that, mas matangkad siya kay Jason Kidd. Tumira siya sa malayo sa harapan ni Jason Kidd na mas maliit sa kanya. Kasi sa basketball, if you are taller than your defender, ang pinakamaganda mong gawin dyan is to shoot the ball near the basket. Gagawa ka na lang ng post move kasi wala na magagawa yung bumabantay sa iyo na maliit But in this case, LeBron did not think of that. Instead of posting Jason Kidd, ang ginawa niya, tinirahan niya ng 18-foot jumper. No? At mintis yung tira niya. A dunk from Dirk Nowitzki, that's from the other team, Dallas Mavericks, gave Dallas a 2-point lead. So bad decision yung ginawa ni LeBron doon. On the ensuing possession, James charged into Dallas center Tyson Chandler who drew the offensive foul. So, ibig sabihin lang yan, yung kanilang possession, yung bola, binigay niya doon sa kanilang kalaban. Ang tawag dyan sa basketball terminology, turnover. Tinurn over niya yung possession nila sa kalaban. After the Mavs missed, James then, ito na naman siya, settled for a 25-foot three-pointer from the top of the key. Malayo na naman yung tinirahan ni LeBron James. Na sana, kasi sa basketball terminology, kapag LeBron James ka, matangkad ka naman, malaki ang katawan mo, dapat you take it hard to the basket. Ang tawag dyan, drive. I-drive mo ng hard, get fouled, and go to the free throw line. Instead, ang ginawa ni LeBron, nag-jump shot, 25-foot three-pointer. Malayo yan. Maliit ang percentage na ang bola papasok. And yun na nga nangyari, no? Hindi pumasok yung bola. And because of that, nung nakuha nung kalaban yung bola, Kidd's three-pointer put Dallas up 105-100 with 150 left and Miami never recovered. At yan na nga yung naging dahilan kung bakit sila natalo. Since hitting 4 of 5 3-pointers in Miami's Game 1 win, ano ang performance ni LeBron James? James has shot 3 for 18 from 3-point range. Mababa yan. 18 beses siyang tumira sa 3-pointer. 3 lang ang pumasok. He's averaging 17.2 points per game in the finals against the Bulls. He averaged 25.8 points per game. Ibig sabihin, nung championship na, nung malalaking laro na, ang average niya 17.2 points per game. Kumpara mo naman kung yung mga games na wala lang, no bearing, regular season games, 25.8 points. Talagang bumagsak yung number niya. From 25.8 to 17.2, ang laki ng binaba niyan. Bakit bumaba ang performance ni Lebron? Malamang sa malamang, hindi niya ma-handle ng maayos yung kanyang anxiety. So, ganyan, no? Ganyang katindi ang anxiety, it can negatively affect your performance. At hindi lang sa sports, ha? Anxiety is also not good when it comes to the educational setting. Isa ito sa mga dahilan kung bakit nagkakaroon ng negative experience yung mga tao sa academe kapag masyadong mataas yung level of anxiety mo. And who are the people experiencing excessively high levels of anxiety? Dalawa yan, teacher at estudyante. Yung mga estudyante, I'm sure, yung mga nakikinig sa akin ngayon, di ba, na-experience nyo yung mental block, yung nag-review ka naman for the exam, sigurado ka sa sarili mo na naaral mo ng maayos, nagpa-review ka sa kaibigan mo, ang galing ng recitation mo sa kaibigan mo, pero pagdating ng actual exam, na blanko ka, bumagsak ka. Bakit? Bakit wala kang maalala during that time when you were taking the exam? Masyadong mataas yung level of anxiety that you cannot activate the long-term memory na naglalaman ng mga bagay na inaaral mo. At ang mga teachers nakakaranas din yan, no? When I was a very young teacher, nung bago pa lang ako, ganyan din ako Yung nabablanko ako sa harap ng blackboard, pero kapag pinapractice ko yung lesson ko ng ako lang, ang galing-galing ko. Pero pag nakita ko na 45 students yung kaharap ko, at lahat sila nakatingin sa akin, nagbubulungan, yung iba nagtatawanan, anxiety level goes up, my memory can no longer access the things that I need to teach. Kaya nabablanko ako. Wala akong naisusulat sa blackboard. Nauutal-utal ako. Yun. Ganon katindi ang epekto ng anxiety. It affects your performance. It even affects your mental health Ganyang katindi ang anxiety, even your mental health naapektuhan. Kapag sobrang taas ang level of anxiety mo at hindi mo na-control yan, baka mag-develop ka ng GAD, also known as Generalized Anxiety Disorder. You can just pause the video and read the symptoms. Pero yung mga symptoms na yan, ang sinasabi lang yan, ganyan ang mangyayari sa'yo kapag nawalan ka ng control sa sarili mong anxiety. In Tagalog, di ba may expression tayo dyan, kapag kinain ka ng buo ng anxiety mo, it may result to generalized anxiety disorder. Now, let's go spiritual. Ang anxiety, meron ding negative effect yan sa ating spiritual life, specifically sa ating faith. And when our faith is shaken up by anxiety, it affects our relationship with God. At hindi nagiging maganda yan for our spiritual life. In the Bible, ang magandang demonstration dito, how anxiety affects faith, is the narrative ni disciple Peter when he was walking on the sea with Jesus. You remember the story, di ba? Yung mga disciples nasa boat, tapos nagkaroon ng matitinding mga waves, malalakas yung hangin, and they were so scared. Akala nila mamamatay sila. Until they saw Jesus walking on the water, they were scared. At first, they thought multo si Jesus. Pero si Jesus, pinacify sila. Sabi ni Jesus, huwag kayong matakot, ako to. And then Peter challenged him, Lord, if it's you, kung ikaw talaga yan, tell me na bumaba dito sa boat na ito at pumunta sa'yo. And that's exactly what Jesus said. Sabi niya, sige, halika, pumunta ka sa akin. And Peter, with his faith, in fairness kay Peter, mataas ang faith niya during that time, no? Bumaba siya sa boat, naglakad siya sa water, going towards Jesus. But what happened? Merong nangyari during that time that really gave him anxiety. He lost his focus from Jesus. So punong-puno siya ng faith kasi nakafocus siya kay Jesus. Pero habang naglalakad siya towards Jesus, what happened? Meron siyang nakita. When he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? Bakit siya nagkaroon ng anxiety? Kasi nakakita siya ng mga events that really fired up his anxiety. Yung wind boisterous, yung malalakas na hampas ng hangin, yung mga waves sa pagkalaki-laki, he lost his focus. From Jesus, he focused on the boisterous wind. It gave him anxiety, kaya ang nangyari, yun yung kinalubog niya. Kaya siya nag-doubt. Diba? Doubt can be a form of anxiety. Yun ngayon yung kinalubog niya. Kaya nga in the Bible, kung sa mga biblical scholars, they're saying na ang worrying can be considered a sin. Diba? Bakit ba kasalanan ang mag-worry ka? Ito ang sagot. It doubts the wisdom of God. It doubts the love of God. It doubts the power of God. Humihina yung faith mo. If there is one thing that can really weaken, paghihinain yung iyong pananampalataya, it is worry. It is a form of anxiety. So the more you worry, the more yung faith mo humihina, the more you are losing your connection to God. Kaya the Bible is telling us na kasalanan talaga ang mag-worry. Kasi kapag worry ka ng worry, in a way you are letting your connection with God to be negatively affected. Kaya nga sinasabi ng 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 7, 'di ba? When you are anxious, anong gagawin mo? Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. I want you to notice the word cast. Alam niyo ba anong ibig sabihin ng cast? Kapag i-check nyo sa dictionary, it means ibato, to throw away. Hindi lang basta-basta to place your anxiety on him or give your anxiety on him. The word is strong. Cast. Ibato mo. Diba? Kailan ba natin binabato ang isang bagay kapag ayaw na ayaw natin yon sa possession natin? Diba? O ibato mo yung ipis kasi ayaw mo yung ipis sa katawan mo. Diba? So babato mo yung ipis. Ganon din yung worry. Ganon din yung anxiety. When you feel anxious, hindi maganda sa'yo yan, ibato mo kaagad. Because He cares for you. Worrying is a sin. So, just to summarize, yung mga sinabi ko sa points number 3, 4, and 5, baka kasi maguluhan kayo, no? Yung ibang points kasi dyan, sinasabi na okay ang anxiety. Yung dalawang points dyan, sinasabi hindi okay ang anxiety. Ano ba talaga? This is the summary. Moderate anxiety is good. Excessive anxiety is bad. It is only good to a certain extent. Kapag yung anxiety mo, ganitong level, it makes you move, it makes you prepare, pwede yan, okay lang yan. Kaya ka nagtatrabaho, kaya inaalagaan mo yung bebe mo, 'di ba? Kasi ayaw mong iwan ka niya, okay yan. That's healthy anxiety. Pero kapag tumaas pa yung level of anxiety mo, napunta na dito sa part na to, look at what happens generally, hindi na maganda ang epekto sa'yo. Tumataas na ang level of cortisol mo, hindi ka na makatulog, hindi ka na makausap ng matino, you are now losing your connection to God because you are so anxious. So yan yung ibig sabihin, yan yung relationship o yan yung sagot sa tanong na gaano karaming anxiety lang ba yung allowable in our psychological life. Dapat moderate lang. And let me close this video by teaching you point number 6. Alam nyo, thoughts create anxiety. Listen to me now, this is very important. Hindi yung situation yung nagpapa-anxious sa tao. Kasi default natin yan. That's the way we explain anxiety. Bakit ka na-anxious? Ang pagbibintangan natin yung sitwasyon. Bakit ka anxious? Kasi wala akong pera. Bakit ka anxious? Kasi may sakit yung pet ko. Bakit ka anxious? Kasi iniwan niya ako. We always point to the situation na akala natin yung situation, yung nagbibigay sa atin ng anxiety, wrong. Mali yun. It's not the situation that gives you anxiety. The situation is neutral. Ano ang nagbibigay sa iyo ng anxiety? The way you see the situation, the way you interpret the situation, yan yung nagbibigay sa iyo ng anxiety. Halimbawa dyan, yung pagiging broken-hearted, iniwan ka para sa iba. Now, that's a situation. That is an event. Pero hindi yun ang nagpa-anxious sa'yo. Ang nagpa-anxious sa'yo is paano mo kasi ininterpret, paano mo inisip yung sitwasyon na yon, paano mo ininterpret yung sitwasyon na yon. Whether or not you will be anxious given that situation, depende yan on how you take it, how you think about it. For example, kapag ang take mo dyan wala akong kwenta, ang pangit ko, kaya ako iniwan kasi kulang akong tao, kasi wala akong kwenta, talagang ma-anxious ka. Baka maya-maya ma-depress ka na yan kapag ganyan ang interpretation mo sa nangyari sa'yo. Pero kapag ang interpretation mo more positive, more empowering, like marami naman ako natutunan. Iniwan nga niya ako, marami naman ako natutunan. At yung mga natutunan ko, pwede kong gamitin yan the next time I'm going to enter a relationship. And because of that, my next relationship will be much, much better compared to my previous one. O, diba? Ang ganda. Kapag ganun yung take mo doon sa pagiging broken-hearted mo, mas hindi ka ma-anxious kasi you are taking it positively. Don't get me wrong. I know, it's easier said than done. Diba? Mahirap kasi kapag ikaw mismo yung nasa sitwasyon na yan. Ang default mo, mas mag-iisip ka talaga nito Negative, color red. Diba? Talaga namang ganun Kasi nasasaktan ka. Pero, again, ang magandang balita lang dito we are not slaves of our own anxieties. Meron tayong control whether we will become anxious or not, and that depends on how we will think. At ang magandang balita, when it comes to how we think, it is within our control. Meron tayong say, meron tayong control kung paano natin titignan ang isang bagay, lalo na yung mga events na hindi maganda. In fact, if you study theories of personality, there is this psychologist, very popular, Albert Ellis, naniniwala siya na ang pinaka-source pala ng anxiety in any form, worry, anger, fear, whatever, kapag meron kang irrational beliefs, kapag meron kang mga pinaniniwalaan sa utak mo na considered irrational, hindi makatarungan, overgeneralization, walang basehan. Kapag yung ulo mo punong-puno ng mga ganyang beliefs, it will make you anxious. Diba? Ang tawag niya dyan, mga irrational thoughts. Therefore, if you go to Albert Ellis at magpapa-counsel ka sa kanya, kasi mataas ang anxiety mo, ang gagawin niya, titignan niya, i-identify niya yung mga irrational beliefs mo, and then he is going to use techniques on you para yung mga irrational thoughts na yan ay mapapalitan to become more rational. Okay? Yan yung approach ni Albert Ellis. But again, wala tayo dito sa place para i-discuss yung lahat ng specific details how Albert Ellis does his therapy. Pero ang gusto ko lang point na makuha nyo dito is whether or not you will be anxious depends on how you choose to think. There are certain ways of thinking na kapag ganun yung thinking mo, makes you anxious. Pero meron din namang mga certain ways of thinking na kapag ganun ang thinking mo, it will make you less anxious. So please lang, huwag mong pagbintangan yung situation na yun yung nagpa-anxious sa'yo. It's more on how you see, how you interpret the situation that makes you anxious. Sabi nga ni Albert Ellis, ang gaganda ng mga quotes niya dito, people don't just get upset, they contribute to their upsetness. Ano ang contribution nila sa kanilang sariling upsetness? The way they think, the way they saw the situation. Rational beliefs bring us closer to getting good results in the real world. Yan naman yung pag-uusapan natin next episode. Ano ba yung mga iba't ibang mga techniques para yung pag-iisip natin, para yung interpretation natin on negative things ay mas maging positive. Okay, kaya alam nyo, gusto ko rin yung approach ni Papa Jackson yung sa kanyang program. 'Di ba meron siyang program title Sorry, Thank You and Goodbye. Yung mga gustong makipaghiwalay na sa kanilang mga partners pero hirap na hirap sila, Papa Jackson is guiding them, and this is his very popular outline, which I agree, Sorry, thank you, and goodbye. Yes, masakit ang makipag-break. Masakit ang iwan mo na ang isang relationship na naging parte na ng buhay mo. Pero ang maganda dito sa outline ni Papa Jackson kasi is yung outline niya na sorry, thank you, goodbye, it forces you to look at that event, which is the breakup, in a positive way. Bakit ka nagsosorry? Anong contribution yan? Paano nakakatulong yung pag nagsosorry ka? Kasi napapractice mo yung idea na hindi lang puro siya yung may kasalanan. Although again, pwedeng may kasalanan yung partner mo, pero to be more realistic, meron ka ring pagkukulang. Kaya ka nagsusorry, kaya pinapasorry ka ni Papa Jackson sa mga pagkukulang mo. Mas nagiging positive yung tingin mo doon sa breakup na, in fairness, ako rin naman maraming pagkukulang. Although niloko niya ako, although marami siyang pagkukulang, it takes two to tango. In the first place, dalawa kami dito sa relationship. So, hindi ko naman pwedeng sabihin na puro siya lang ang may mali. O, di ba? In that way, parang mas hindi nagiging hindi ka nagiging bias. Hindi mo dinidemonize yung yung iiwan mo. Tinatanggap mo na ikaw rin may pagkakamali. Oh, gusto ko rin yung second part, thank you. Yan ang maganda. Kasi kapag magte-thank you ka doon sa iyong iiwan, now you are encouraging yourself to search the positives from the relationship na iiwan mo na. Kasi karamihan sa mga tao na bitter sa pakikipag-break, una, ang iniisip nila, everything is their partner's fault. Second, walang magandang nangyari sa relationship. Which are both, I think, irrational thoughts. Napaka-irrational na belief yan na sabihin mong lahat kasalanan niya at walang magandang nangyari sa inyo. Irrational. So to make it more rational, maging balanse tayo. No? Meron akong mali at marami rin magandang nangyari sa relationship natin at nagpapasalamat ako sa iyo dahil dyan. Kaya ako agree ako dito sa approach ni Papa Jackson in guiding people how to healthily live an unhappy relationship. Alright? Shout out kay Papa Jackson kung nakikita nyo to, no? Oo, tuloy nyo lang po yan. Maganda po yan in the language of psychology. Alright? So, again, in summary, as we close this video, ito ang mga napag-usapan natin ngayon on anxiety. Anxiety is an emotion. Tendency to be anxious has genetic basis. Moderate anxiety is good. Excessive anxiety is bad. Excessive anxiety negatively affects performance and thoughts create anxiety. Ang dami nating natutunan on how anxiety works. Now, sa ating next episode, na sana abangan nyo, don't miss this, very important. From these things that we learned about anxiety, imamatch na natin tong mga ideas na ito into certain things that we can do that can help us handle our anxiety. If there is one thing about anxiety that you need to expect, it is that lagi kang magkakaroon ng anxious moment. Walang tao sa mundo ang hindi magkakaroon ng anxiety. I mean, si Jesus pa nga lang, Diyos na yun eh. No, na-anxious pa. Tayo pa kayang mga mortal na tao. So, kung hindi natin maiiwasan yung anxiety, then I think it makes sense na pag-aralan natin kung paano ba natin i-handle ang anxiety whenever it comes to us. At yan yung pag-uusapan natin next meeting. Yan yung part 2 natin. How can we effectively handle anxiety? So, thank you for listening sa aking maikling lecture on the basics of human anxiety. As I always say, if you know anyone na sa tingin mo anxious at kailangan niyang marinig itong mga bagay na pinag-usapan natin ngayon, don't hesitate to share this video. You have my permission to do so. If you have any questions about anxiety, mag-post lang kayo sa baba sa comment section and I'm going to do my best to answer your questions as soon as possible. Alright? Sige. Let's end the video. Thank you everyone. Have a great day and God bless.